we're going to explore one of the most critical aspects of healthcare, ensuring that research involves, you know, ensuring that any research study that will involve human participants is conducted ethically. It's conducted responsibly and with the utmost respect for human dignity. Okay, so this is what research ethics in nursing practice is all about. But before we dive into our contents, let's review muna let's start by looking at our learning objectives. Para clear sa inyo, what do you need to aim for today's session? First is, of course, to understand no, the fundamental principles of research ethics, including the key historical milestone that will highlight the importance ng research ethics. Also, yung application ng informed consent. Okay? Yung application ng informed consent. And how to do the risk-benefit analysis. Because any research study, to a lesser or greater extent, will involve some risk. But of course, in every research study, it's important to minimize that risk. So the risk must be identified prior to research ethics clearance. And you should be able to articulate how you are going to implement your safeguards, your protection towards the research participants para ma-minimize yung risks for them. And also, doon din, kailangan you need to be able to identify the benefits ng maayos about your research study. And these risks and benefits must be weighed. No? So yun. Sometimes, if there are risks, the benefits should outweigh these risks. That's the only way for the research study or research proposal to be allowed to be conducted or implemented. Kaya ka-importante yung risk-benefit analysis. And the next topic is you should be able to understand vulnerability and how to recognize who are these people who are vulnerable. Because these vulnerable population as research participants will definitely receive a more specific special treatment. What do we mean by that? We need to enhance safeguards or protection for them because they have diminished autonomy because of their vulnerability. So that's the only way, again, for a research proposal to be allowed kasi to be conducted. But once these vulnerable populations are involved, tapos walang safeguards, hindi yan mai-implement. The Research Ethics Committee or the Institutional Review Board will not allow it to be conducted kasi, yun nga, may vulnerable na yung population ng respondents mo, they have diminished autonomy, tapos wala ka pang gaanong safeguards or protection for them na inarticulate doon sa proposal. So, yun. Kaya importante yung vulnerability recognition. Kasi doon magsisimula yung plano ninyo on how to protect this particular group of people, group of respondents who have diminished autonomy. Okay? So yun. So dapat walo yan na categories of vulnerability. And then of course, the ethical dilemmas. How are you going to evaluate the ethical dilemma to identify the conflicts, the competing values? Ano dapat ang decision? How will you justify that decision? Ano yung moral evaluation? Okay? So yun. I hope na very clear sa inyo. Although I think I've given you a copy already of these slides, but I hope yun nga, klaro sa inyo. Ano dapat yung inyong maintindihan sa topic na to. Okay? Now, let's start. What is really research ethics? As we have previously mentioned that research ethics is about conducting research study responsibly and ethically. So research ethics is a collection of ethical rules, no, that will instruct the researchers on how to perform and communicate scientific research responsibly. So it's not just conducting the study, but also on disseminating it. O, yun, the research ethics is essentially our moral compass in the research world. Now, ang tanong, why does it really matter? Why it matters that we have these ethical rules in research? Because unang-una, syempre, it will protect the participants. And when we protect the participants' rights and dignity, we are ensuring that that there is an ethical clinical practice standards taking place in our profession. Okay. Also, research ethics will ensure quality research. Thus, it will help build public trust in the scientific body of knowledge. It will build public trust in research. The scientific body of knowledge will have more credibility because of research ethics. Okay? So yun. Now, there are three main goals sa research ethics. And I have mentioned din kanina yung why it matters. It is una, to protect participants. Ulit. So, paano silang ipoprotect? Yung dignity nila as a person must be protected. Now, their rights, their welfare. Pangalawa, yung ensuring social value. The research study must improve the welfare of the people, the individuals, the groups, or the community. And third is to assess the ethical reliability. Now, we have to consider risk management, privacy, confidentiality, and informed consent to really say that the research proposal or the research study is ethically reliable. Kumbaga, there are again specific measures, safeguard measures, and methodological components that will ensure ethical reliability. Okay? So if you notice, it's basically the primary goal is protection because everything else, the primary goal is always protection and everything else comes second. Okay? Now, to understand why these goals are important, it would be good to look at the historical foundation. Bakit ganito yung goals ng research ethics? Well, the Nuremberg Code, we have discussed this already in the first 2 weeks of our of the semester. So anyone again who can remember, who can refresh the memory of everyone kung ano yung Nuremberg Code?
Modern research ethics.
Participants sa research po by ensuring
What happened during the World War II and the trial prosecuted. Wala. Dahil ba nagre-recitation? Yung timestamp naman, no, nasa team that na yon. Dun sa trial na yon. And this code, the Nuremberg Code, is a set of ethical research principles that was published or created in 1947. So wait lang ha. Okay. Punta na ako dun sa slide. So again, it was created in 1947. After Nazi medical atrocities, that were revealed during the tribunals, during the military tribunals. yung trial na yon. Okay? And these 10 principles, ang unang-unang dyan ay yung voluntary informed consent. Right? So, kung makikita natin, siya ang una. Hindi siya yung pangalawa, pangatlo, pang-sampo. Because voluntary informed consent is very fundamental, no, in conducting research study. Siyempre, sino yung magbibigay ng voluntary informed consent? It's the research participants. And these are the human subject, no, in research. Pangalawa, yung necessary results. Pangatlo, it should be based on science. Pang-apat, it should avoid suffering. Pang-lima, dapat may balance between risk, ma-weigh yung risk versus benefits. Pang-anim, protection. Pang-pito, qualified conduct, no, ng mga researchers. Pang-walo is the right to stop. Right ng participants to stop the experiment dun sa subject. They all have the right to withdraw. At saka syempre, meron din silang yung pang-siyam is the responsibility ng mga scientists in charge in conducting the study. So, these scientists, no, the research scientists must be prepared to terminate the agreement at any stage. Lalo na if merong probable cause to believe that yung continuation ng research experiment na yon will just likely end up, no, injuring the research participants. So dapat si research scientist must have that commitment, must that have responsible, no, to stop the experiment at any time na this experiment becomes detrimental na or dangerous na to the research participants. Siyempre yung significance and all of significance ng research study. And all of these, no, principles, ito yung mga nakasulat dito sa slide. Voluntary informed consent, social value, minimizing harm, right to withdraw. These are the main highlights ng Nuremberg Code. Okay? But of course, hindi lang yung 10 principles from the Nuremberg Code ang reason, no, for backing up modern research ethics. Although the Nuremberg Code was crucial, but of course another report provided the needed additional guidance, and this is the Belmont Report. So ano naman yung Belmont Report? Anyone who can remember the Belmont Report? Anyone?
Nagawa rin po siya because sa isang
Anyone? The task who were the research participants in the Tuskegee syphilis study. The purpose doon ay to examine, to study the disease about syphilis. So, yung progression ng syphilis as a disease. So, imagine, these people were being observed sa development ng kanilang symptoms, how it becomes severe, ano yung mga lumilitaw, and they were deprived of the treatment for that disease. The treatment was withheld from these participants without their consent. Okay? And kaya ang Belmont Report, kung ang Nuremberg Code was created sa Germany, in the Nuremberg, saan ginawa yung Nuremberg Code? Sa Nuremberg, Germany. No? It's actually the Nuremberg Code was actually drafted in the Palace of Justice sa Nuremberg, Germany. Kaya ganun yung pangalan niya. Pero yung Belmont Report, it was created naman in the United States. It was created by the U.S. National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research, no, which outlines the basic ethical principles. Okay, which outlines the basic ethical principles and guidelines that should govern the research involving human beings. At ito nga yung respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. Kung ang Nuremberg Code was created no in 1947, ang Belmont Report was created in 1979. Okay? So yun. So these three principles, no, these three broad principles, yung respect for persons, beneficence at justice, are the very focus ng Belmont Report. So ano ba yung sa respect for persons? That every person has to be treated as autonomous agents. Okay? Tapos yung mga tao with diminished autonomy, sino ba yung mga people with diminished autonomy? Those children, those prisoners, no, or people with cognitive disabilities, they are entitled to special protection because they have diminished autonomy. And that is how respect for persons has to be demonstrated. And to ensure that there is respect for person, ang pinaka-application nito is securing the informed consent. No? So the informed consent is a requirement to ensure na na-observe ang respect for persons as a principle in the Belmont Report. Maliwanag ba? Klaro ba yun sa inyo? I see a thumbs up kung clear. O walang nagre-react, baka makatulog kayo. No, so application ng respect for persons ang informed consent. Although of course, yun. And it's also an evidence of the participants being given their autonomy. So respect for persons is directly related to the ethical principle of autonomy. Okay? So yun. Next is beneficence. Ang mga researcher, they have the obligation to secure the well-being of their participants. And securing the well-being of the participants means the researcher must maximize benefits and the researcher must minimize the harm. Okay? Benefits while minimizing possible harm. Okay? Ibig sabihin, bawat researcher dapat alam nila ano yung mga possible risk na dapat nilang i-minimize at alam rin nila, klarong-klaro din dapat sa kanilang proposal, research proposal, lahat ng mga benefits and how they are maximizing it. Okay, next is justice. The benefits and burdens of research must be distributed fairly. So, ano ibig sabihin nito? This only means that no group of respondents should bear all the risks ng research or be excluded from the benefits without good reason. Okay, kaya yung mga inclusion and ang application nito ng justice, yung selection of subjects. Selection of subjects or samples or respondents sa inyong methodology. And every subject should be subject selection should be fair. and not exploit the vulnerable populations. Okay? Like, for example, doon na lang tayo mag-conduct sa barangay na yon kasi yung mga tao din sa barangay na yon, they are underprivileged people, so they will likely be participating in this study. Mga ganon. So, yung ganong type of selection, it already shows no, a degree of exploitation of those people who are economically disadvantaged. Okay? So, yun. So, that is how, malinaw ba? Malinaw ba sa inyo yung dalawang document na to? Kasi these are very important in modern research ethics. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. There are 3 ethical approaches. There are 3 ethical approaches in research. First is the goal-based. It should be goal-based. Pangalawa ay duty-based. At pangatlo ay dapat ang research ay rights-based. So, isa-isahin natin. In goal-based, the key concept is that the outcome justifies the means. In duty-based, the key concept is that good outcome doesn't really justify unethical methods. At yung rights-based is focusing on the individual rights above research goals. So let's dive into each one. In the goal-based approach, it asks, yun nga, does the end really justify the means? If the research outcome is beneficial to the society, then the method used may be justified. Okay? Kaya nga, based on and this is actually consequentialist thinking. And based on the consequentialist theory, this goal-based approach assumes that if the researcher's intended goal is worthwhile, then the methods for reaching that outcome are also justified. No, they're also worthwhile. Okay? So, yun. So, anong ginagawa dito sa goal-based approach na to? Specifically, the researcher aims to generate the best balance ng benefits over the disbenefit or the risks. At dapat, the outcome will justify method. So, individual discomfort may be justified by the societal implications. Also, research is unethical if the outcome is unimportant in a goal-based approach. Even if yung procedure is ethical, pero yung outcome naman ay sinasabing unimportant or useless naman siya. So, the studies also becomes unethical. Because you are, kumbaga, mindlessly wasting resources, no? For a study that is unimportant. Mga ganon. And in the goal-based approach, outcome is just as crucial as the procedure itself. Okay? So, yun. Anong example? Specific example ng sa goal-based approach. Kasi the outcome would justify the methods. Ibig sabihin, in the methodology itself, merong violation. Merong hindi ethical na step. Like for example, in a research study about bias. So ang topic ay to examine, study bias. No, whatever bias it is. Pwede rin racial bias, mga ganon. So when we talk about bias, syempre it's about the people's or the respondents' own perspective. Diba? Yung kanyang sariling perspective, meron ba siyang mga biases na wait lang So yun. So kasi ang there might be different might be different types of biases. Okay, so it could be a selection bias, a research, reporting bias, observation bias. Pero pagdating sa isang research study, kumbaga you're trying to establish ano yung inclination ng group of people, yung kanilang tendency to think about a particular concept or context. So yung mga prejudices ng mga people. At ito, when you are conducting a study about bias, kailangan authentic yung answers di ba, ng respondents para talagang masabi mo na these are their biases. These are their own tendency. Now, if these people, pag alam nila yung purpose ng study ay about bias, pwedeng ang maging effect noon, maging hindi authentic yung kanilang responses. Kasi ang gagawin nila, pwedeng i-improve nila yung kanilang sagot, kumbaga, mag-i-improve yung kanilang behavior during data gathering. So, ang isang step sa ganitong type of study is not to inform kumbaga, hindi i-inform yung participants about the purpose ng study. Ang safeguard lang dyan ay pag naka-data gather na, pagtapos ng data gathering, after the interview, that's the time that the researcher will tell the participants kung ano talaga yung purpose ng study. Pangalawa, na safeguard is the participants will be asked if they are willing nagmagamit ang kanilang data, no, ang mga responses nila sa actual study after knowing the real purpose. That study is about bias, no, about prejudices sa isang racial bias, yung mga ganon. So kung mapapansin niyo, pag ganon ang approach, ang study design, talagang meron ngang violation. Kasi isn't it that ang informed consent should be voluntary? So para maging informed consent 'yon at the outset, dapat alam ng respondents yung kanyang pinapasukan, diba? So dapat fully informed si patient bago pa ang data gathering. Pero in that case of that kind of study, nag-data gathering na hindi fully informed si patient and they were only performed after na the data gathering. Okay? So may violation doon about the autonomy, about the respect for persons ng Pero yun na nga. In a goal-based approach, sinasabi ni goal-based approach na, well, the outcome will justify the means because it's important to understand clearly these racial biases ng mga tao para we can come up with appropriate also interventions. Mga ganon. So, yun ang isang example. Anyway, we will talk about paano nire-resolve yung ganong study and how is it allowed to be conducted. Okay, so malinaw ba ang goal-based approach? Now, let's move on to the duty-based approach. Okay, in the duty-based approach, it says that the methods matter as much as outcomes. Even if the research has great benefits, if you deceive or harm participants, it becomes unethical. No? So yun yung sa duty-based approach. And the moral duty to participants cannot be violated. Yun ang stand ng duty-based approach. Okay? So in the duty-based approach, the researcher's responsibility is based on personal moral ideals and obligation. No? So kailangan matatag yung inner compass ng researcher in the duty-based approach. Yung kanyang personal moral ideals and obligation to practice with fidelity yung protecting the participants. Kasi pwedeng mag-isa niya lang as at the time data gathering. So dapat siya nakadepende sa kanyang personal commitment, kanyang personal moral ideals and obligation to advocate na for the research participants. Yung wala siyang magmamando sa kanya, but by himself he will decide to be faithful doon sa kanyang duty to protect the research participants. Okay? So very strong ang duty to self and duty to others who are participating in the study. And even if outcome is worthy, yun nga, if the researcher lies or deceives the participants, then the research will be considered useless. It's considered unethical. Then next is the rights-based approach. In the rights-based approach, it prioritizes individual rights above all else. Okay? So, a participant's freedom to decline in the rights-based approach must be respected, regardless of how important the research might be. O kaya kahit paano pang research implication, gumastos ka na, nag-ano ka na ng oras, na kalagitnaan na ng data gathering, tapos biglang si research participant ayaw na. So dapat it has to be respected. The research participants should be allowed to withdraw from the experiment without penalty. Yun ha, without penalty. Because in the rights-based approach, individual rights are paramount and must be respected throughout the research process. Gustong mag-withdraw ni respondent, ayaw na niya. Pumirma siya ng informed consent initially. Can he still withdraw? The answer is yes. Of course he can. Because these individual rights ay hindi lang i-respect initially during the informed consent. It has to be observed all throughout the research process. So kung sa kalagitnaan ay ayaw na research participant for whatever reason na meron siya, then he should be allowed to withdraw from the experiment. So participants' freedom to decline must be respected, regardless of the research implications. And the researcher's ethical obligations ay primarily to the individual. Hindi pwedeng, ba't yung iba naman, tuloy-tuloy naman sila. Hindi naman sila magwi-withdraw. Bakit ikaw magwi-withdraw? So, hindi ganun ang reasoning doon. Because the researcher's ethical obligation ay hindi naman para sa lahat. Kumbaga, simultaneously, para sa lahat. Kundi, each individual has their own unique, kumbaga, characteristics. And each individual or each participant has their rights to that has to be respected. So every human being must be respected even if it has unintended repercussions. So basically, these three gives us the framework for thinking. Okay? But we also have the 4 core principles. Ito yung interactive activity. Ito yung 4 core ethical principles that will guide our decision aside from those ethical approaches, yung goal-based, duty-based, rights-based. So the 4 ethical principles, alam nyo na to. These are actually the 4 pillars. Paulit-ulit na natin tong dinidiscuss mula nung prelims. At alam nyo na rin kung paano ito i-apply in marriage ethics, sexuality, human reproduction, compassion, end-of-life care. Pero in research, let's talk about the 4 core ethical principles. Okay? Let's start with the autonomy muna. Alam nyo naman to that autonomy means respecting a person's freedom, a person's right to make their own decisions. Now, in research, individual autonomy is respected and protected throughout the research process. Sabi nga natin kanina. It doesn't mean na nagbigay na sila ng informed consent initially ay hindi na sila pwedeng umalis. na i-breach nila kumbaga yung data gathering, they can do that. They can withdraw. They should be allowed to withdraw. Okay? Also, in research, paano in-observe ang autonomy, those with impaired or limited autonomy are protected from injury and abuse by providing protections. Ang tanong, ma'am, saan natin nilalagay paano natin ipoprovide yung protections na yon specifically in research? Well, una, sa methodology ng proposal ninyo, research proposal, doon dapat nakasulat lahat on how you're going to protect those respondents with limited autonomy. If your respondents are vulnerable population, so mas lalong dapat yung mga special safeguards ninyo and protection for these vulnerable groups must be articulated clearly, straightforwardly, deliberately sa methodological section ng inyong research proposal. Clear ba yon? May see a thumbs up kung saan ninyo isusulat yon. Kaya sa nursing research ninyo, pag nagsulat kayo ng research proposal, sa inyong methodology, dapat i-ano ninyo yun. You have to be very thorough. How you are going to write or how you're going to write your specific safeguards or protection para sa iyong mga respondents. Eh, ang tanong, ma'am, paano namin malalaman to protect them? Doon pa lang sa inyong review of related literature. Dapat na pag-aralan nyo na doon, who are these people who are affected? Kumbaga doon or covered doon sa inyong research topic. So their characteristics, what happens to them, what will be the impact ng study, or what could be the dapat doon may mga nalaman niyo yun doon nung nag-review kayo ng related literature. Para alam niyo rin kung paano rin sila ipoprotect, no, yung mga vulnerable population na to. Okay? So, clear ba yon? Clear ba sa inyo to? Yung sa methodology ng inyong research proposal. May I see a thumbs up? Oh, wala na naman akong kausap. Walang nagre-react. All right, sige. Thank you for that, for those of you na nag-thumbs up. Now, let's go to non-maleficence. Paano namang ino-observe ang non-maleficence sa research? In research, the researcher's commitment not to cause injury or expose individuals to unnecessary risk. Ito, given na to sa lahat ng research study. No research study must commit or cause injury to the research participant. And if ever the participants will be exposed to risk, dapat merong mga special safeguards. Okay? Next, especially crucial when participants' autonomy is impaired or compromised, ay yung mga safeguards natin para ma-observe ang non-maleficence. Okay? And next is to minimize risk and potential harm in all research activities. That is how we observe non-maleficence in research. We also protect the participants from any harm. So lahat ng harm, lahat ng risk ay dapat ma-identify natin. Ano yung mga possible harm or risk na yun? Yung mga, okay, so yun. So whether it is physical harm, psychological harm, social harm, and others. Okay, then next is beneficence. Paano naman nating ino-observe ang beneficence in research? So the responsibility again of all researchers is to maximize benefits while minimizing damage to participants. So yun on how we practice beneficence. Also, another way to practice beneficence in research is to help others pursue their interests, and well-being through research activities. Specifically, kung may oras ka rin lang and you will be invited to be a research participant, then please be involved. No? To practice beneficence because you're contributing to the body of knowledge. If may oras ka and you are asked to validate instruments, please do so. Okay? If you have the resources, then please make time to support other colleagues. Lalo na kung hindi mo naman kailangan yung resources na yon at masasayang din lang. And this is how we practice beneficence in research as professionals. Okay? Another way to practice beneficence in research is to act in participants' best interest throughout the research process. Always looking into how you can protect the welfare of your research participants hanggang matapos ang research process. But sometimes, beneficence nga can be in conflict with autonomy principle when protecting participants from harm. And this autonomy principle has the danger to lead na maging extreme, yung maging paternalism na. No? So we need to be mindful about this. Okay, so yun. Next is the beneficence will require balancing potential benefits against risks and potential harms. Okay? And lastly, justice. Paano pinapractice ang justice in ethics? The obligation to treat individual in morally correct and proper manner is every researcher's moral obligation. Okay? Na lahat ng mga participants, hindi lang participants, but any individual should be treated properly and correctly. Because that is what people are due. No, people get what they are owed. Kaya nga, when we utilize the time, energy, and effort of others, in our study, in our research study, we somehow give a token. Pero dapat yung token na yon ay minimal. Not to the point that it will make the respondents or the recipient become vulnerable economically. Meaning, magkakaroon ng undue influence yung token mo kapag masyadong mahal sa kanilang yung magkakaroon ng undue influence yung token na ibibigay mo doon sa respondents kapag masyadong mahal yung token mo. Because those who receive that token na mahal, pwede nilang sabihin yun sa ibang future potential respondents. And these potential respondents will just hindi na sila magde-decide on their own, kundi they will be influenced na ng token na pinamimigay ninyo na mahal. Kaya dapat ang token ay wala dapat due influence doon sa decision making ni research participant. Next ay equality of opportunity, especially in inclusion and exclusion criteria. Ito kanina pinag-usapan natin to yung selection of subjects or selection of samples, doon natin pinapractice ang justice in research. And then, of course, the fair distribution of benefits and burdens among research participants. And justify differential treatment based on the morally meaningful distinctions. Like, for example, professor ako, magkakandak ako ng study, kukunin kong respondents, kayo na mga students ko. So, somehow, magkakaroon ako ng undue influence on your decisions kasi professor niyo ako. Okay? Kumbaga, pwedeng maapektuhan kayo na, sige, tulungan natin si ma'am, tsaka, professor naman natin siya. So, kahit pwedeng hindi naman ninyo type maging part ng aking study, ay magiging part kayo dahil yun nga, dahil sa aking possible influence sa inyong decisions. Maliwanag ba? O kaya, another example is, kumbaga so yun. Another example sa differential treatment is how we treat people differently. So, at itong mga differential treatment na to must be justified. Ano pang is other example na to? Wait lang, isip pa ako ng mas sa isang sa isang experimental study, no, pwedeng meron kayong different groups. Meron kang treatment group, meron kang control group. The treatment group ay silang nagre-receive ng treatment that you are trying to test in that experiment. While the control group, sila yung pwedeng makareceive ng placebo. No, treatment. Meaning, hindi naman talaga yun yung treatment, but it's being perceived as a treatment. So, may placebo. Or kaya pwedeng a standard treatment can be given to the control group. While yung treatment group is given the new treatment that is being tested that might have a better impact. Pero the control group must be given the standard treatment. So dalawa yung dalawa ngayon. Ngayon, dun pa lang meron ka ng bias, meron ka ng may difference na on how you are treating these two groups. At the way you are treating these two groups should be justified. Okay? Para yon. At paano mo i-justify siya? Babalik ka ulit sa Belmont report. Yung Belmont test. Ano yung ulit yung tatlong kumbaga magkakanda ka ng gagawa ka ng paano ba to? Belmont test, no, para ma-justify kung yung differential treatment ba is acceptable. So you need to ask again certain questions from the Belmont report. And these certain questions are basically revolving doon sa three principles na pinag-usapan natin kanina, yung respect for persons, is the person fully informed in consent? Fully informed and, who gave consent? Yung sa beneficence, kailangan i-review mo. Does the difference in treatment will actually help them or minimize harm? Tapos lalo na yung sa justice kasi magkaibang treatment mo sa dalawang groups na yon. Are you burdening one group unfairly or are the risks and benefits shared fairly? Kaya nga, ang control group, one of the safeguard is dapat yung control group mo must receive the standard treatment. Hindi pwedeng wala silang hindi sila pwedeng walang ma-receive. Nagets nyo ba? Hindi ko alam na-explain ko ng yung sa differential treatment. Hindi pwedeng walang ma-receive ang control group. Kailangan meron pa rin silang ma-receive na treatment na iba doon sa treatment na na gets nyo? Clear ba? That is the only way to justify the differential treatment. May say thumbs up kung clear. Oh, wala na naman akong kausap. Tatanungin kayo nito ng prof nyo sa nursing research. No, kaya yun. Kaya kailangan ang control group meron dapat silang ma-receive na treatment. That is justice. Okay? Ay, malapit na tayo matapos. But of course, hindi lang naman, so tapos na yung ating mga core ethical principles, no? Again, those four, autonomy, non-maleficence, beneficence, and justice, dapat alam ninyo paano ina-apply siya in the research process. But of course, hindi lang naman yung core ethical principles, although they are the bedrock, the core pillars of research ethics. Importante din na alam natin, no, yung general principles ng research ethics. At syempre, kasama dyan, no, yung honesty. Honesty, which simply means no fabricating data. Integrity simply means we need to keep our promises. Objectivity simply means avoiding bias. Informed consent, pag-usapan natin to in detail. And then, of course, respect for persons. No, pinag-usapan na natin to kanina. It's about the autonomy, no, people, freedom of the people. Now, let's dive in sa informed consent. Na-discuss na natin to during the midterms. But then let's review kasi importante na klarong-klaro ito sa research ethics. Dahil yun nga, according to the principles ng Nuremberg Code, fundamental ang involuntary informed consent. Kaya dapat naiintindihan natin ng malinaw ang informed consent. So the informed consent is basically the participant's voluntary decision. No, after understanding information without coercion, undue influence, or reward. No, so hindi lang siya yes, hindi lang siya mag-signature, kundi yung yes na yon at signature na yon must be done after full information. After na walang coercion, walang undue influence. No, at wala ring reward. No, because sometimes the reward can have influence doon sa attitude ng participants. At ang consent na yon ay hindi lang again initially. It is observed until the end ng research. So again lang sinabi natin kanina, yes, nagpirma siya ng voluntary consent, in the middle ayaw niya na, then let the participants go. Dahil ano niya yon, right niya yon. So there are two types of consent. One is expressed consent at another is implied consent. Pag expressed, it's either oral and written. Okay? Verbally expressed or signed doon sa printed paper. Or it could be an implied consent sa behavior ni patient. Pwedeng tumango si patient o tinanong mo siya kung okay sa kanya, in-explain mo, tapos nakita mo yung mukha niya, tumatango-tango, yung mata niya is very engaged, nakangiti pa siya. So this is our behavior signs. No, that na may implication, may ini-imply na consent. Another example, nag-thumbs up si patient. Nung tinatanong mo siya, in-explain mo, blah, blah, blah. So, ganun din si participants, nag-thumbs up siya. Si research participant. So, that's implied consent. Okay? Now, importante in the process ng informed consent ay yung renewal or updating. If in case in the middle of the research study being implemented, nagkaroon ng significant changes in the procedure, then the informed consent must be reviewed and updated at i-secure ulit ang consent ni participant. Okay, clear ba yon? May see if the thumbs up kung klaro yon. So again, it's a process. Informed consent is a process. It's a conversation, no, between the researcher and the research participants. Hindi lang siya simpleng yes at signature sa form. Okay? So yan. Saan natin yan. Now, there are essential requirements and information sa informed consent. Dapat requirements doon sa informed consent should be there is an opportunity for the participant for questions. Bigyan natin sila ng ample chance para mag-ask ng question. We need to encourage them to ask. And then we should eliminate coercion. Dapat walang deceit. There is no undue influence. Wala rin dapat intimidation. Like for example, ako magkakandak ng research, professor nyo, student ko kayo, tapos sasabihin ko kayo, dapat lahat kayo mag-participate in this study. Wala dapat na aayaw. Di, lagot kayo sa akin. So that's intimidation. Na parang, o kaya kahit di ko sabihin lagot kayo sa akin, pero yung mukha ko, seryoso na ganyan. Parang tinitiyan ko kayo isa-isa kung magpa-participate kayo. So, that's intimidation. Sufficient time. We need to give the participants sufficient time to think about participating. Tsaka syempre, dapat written ang consent. We need to obtain the signature of the participant as an evidence at yung renewal na sinabi ko kanina. Kapag may nagbago doon sa procedure, renew the informed consent. Ang tanong, ano-ano ba dapat ang mga nakapaloob sa informed consent? Una, yung purpose and procedure. So, kasama dyan sa procedure, yung duration. Gaano katagal pa yung data gathering na yun or yung experiment, yung study na yun? Pangalawa, dapat klaro yung risks and benefits masabi mo dun sa patient. No, pangatlo, yung voluntary participation. Dapat doon, kasi ang consent form sa research, lalo na yung mga research instruments na printed, nakalagay din doon, even sa online, no? First page pa lang, nandun yung consent form. So, dapat ito, yung purpose, procedure, risks and benefits, voluntary participation, clearly, deliberately nakasulat yan. That you have the right to refuse, you have the right to withdraw. Mga ganyan. Or the participants have the right to refuse, also has the right to withdraw from the research at any time during the research process without penalty. Dapat nakasulat yan dun sa consent form. Pati yung confidentiality measures. Ano ibig sabihin ng confidentiality measures? How are you going to protect the data? Unang-una sa name ni research participant. Paano mo ipoprotect ang name ni research participant na hindi magkaroon ng unnecessary or unauthorized disclosure ng kanyang identity? Pangalawa, yung kanyang mga responses. Going to protect the data that came from the participants. So kung printed yan, kailangan klaro saan mo itatago yung mga instruments na yan and for how long are you going to store those data. Okay? Pati yung mga safeguards na gagawin mo to protect, to ensure confidentiality. Now kung online data naman yan, ano naman ang plano mong safeguards to also protect this online data? Saan mo siya i-store na drive, na storage drive? Online ba yan? O sa laptop? Ano yung mga password protection? Password protected ba yan? For how long are you going to store them? So, dapat klaro yun sa confidentiality measures. Yung compensation, if there is any for participating, pwede nyo rin isama. But then again, the compensation, yung mga token, should not be to that amount that it will create an undue influence on the decision of potential research participants. At panguli, syempre, yung contact information ninyo dapat nandun sa informed consent. Okay? Now, klaro ba lahat ng ng component, requirements ng informed consent? Okay. Then next, malapit na akong matapos. Next is the risk-benefit analysis. Siyempre, as we have mentioned, we need to minimize the risk and maximize the benefits. Siyempre, unang-una, kailangan natin i-identify yung mga risks. So ano nga ulit ang risk? It is the chance of suffering from harm. And there are two dimensions, severity and probability. Pero yung pangatlo, meron din. Yung interaction between severity and probability. So ano ulit yung severity? It's the size or severity of possible harm that can occur. Hindi pa nangyari, pero pwedeng mangyari. At gaano katindi yung pwedeng mangyari. So that's severity. Probability is the likelihood of or the possibility of the harm occurring. Okay? And how these two are interacting. Yun, kailangan yun i-determine. So, what are the different types of risk? Physical harm ba? Psychological harm ba? Social and economic harm ba? May privacy risk ba? May third-party risk. So, isa-isahin natin. Physical harm. ang respondents ba, pwede ba siyang makafeel ng pain, discomfort, injury from invasive procedure? Are there any adverse effects from the drugs or devices being experimented on? So, yun. Psychological harm. Si respondents ba pwedeng ma-depress, pwedeng ma-confuse, pwedeng ma-stress, pwede ba siya makaramdam ng guilt dahil doon sa iyong study? Pwede pa siyang mawala ng loss of self-esteem, feelings of humiliation. Some might be asking, ma'am, nagtanong lang naman kami ng question. Pwede bang ma-depress na agad doon yung respondents? Yes, pwede. Especially if your questions can trigger anxiety, can trigger traumatic events, memories, unpleasant memories, etc. Okay? So, yan. Anong gagawin? Dapat may protocol ka sa methodology on how you are going to minimize these harms if ever they occur. Next is the social and economic harm. Ano ba yung mga specific examples? Stigma, shame, job loss, criminal prosecution, legal issues. No? So yun. Later when we discuss the categories of vulnerability, maiisa-isa natin itong mga economic harm na yan. Next ay privacy risk, unauthorized disclosure, covert observation of private activities. No, can be privacy risk. Like, for example, sa data storage, yun pa lang, meron ng possible risk. What if magkaroon ng unauthorized disclosure ng data ng identity ni respondents? Pangalawa, what if sa study design mo, it will include observing the participants without their knowledge? Yeah, that's also a privacy risk. Dapat may special safeguards. And lastly, ang third-party risks. They are family members and the community associated with the respondents. Ma'am, pwede ba silang affected? Hindi naman sila kasama sa research? Pwede. Pwede silang magkaroon ng risk for them. Example, you are conducting a study about the Ita community. Diba, may 10,000 people in the Ita community sa Zambales. Tapos kumuha ka doon nakakuha ka doon ng mga around 100 participants para sa iyong qualitative study. Kaya 100 lang kasi after 100 nakita mo na saturated ng data. So 100 from the 100 from the 10,000 Ita in the community. So it so happened ng results ng inyong research ay out of that 100 people, kahit may data saturation, somehow has a repercussion on the image ng Ita community. Now, ang tanong, maapektuhan ba yung mga members ng Ita community na hindi naman nag-participate sa study? Yes, because the results might imply that it's all about them. The results might imply generalizability. So, yun. Kaya pwedeng magkaroon ng third-party risk. Clear ba? May say thumbs up kung clear? Okay, next ay identifying benefits naman. Inisa-isa natin ang risk, isa-isa naman natin ang benefits. There are different types of benefits. We have direct benefits and indirect benefits. But meron ding psychological benefits, health services, compensation. Okay? Now, tingnan natin yung direct benefits. These are actually direct benefits that can improve. Example of this participants, they experience improved health because they participated in a study that has interventions. So meron silang direct benefits. And indirect benefits would be sa ganong participants ay yung free health tests. No? Nag-improve na yung kanilang health because of participating in that study, which is a direct benefit. Tapos yung mga free health tests na nakuha nila doon sa study, that's an indirect benefit. Okay? Yung contribution to scientific knowledge, yung compensation na binigay sa kanila, those are indirect benefits. Maliwanag? Klaro ba sa inyo kung ano ang difference ng indirect at direct benefits? So, ayan, yung mga psychological benefits, health services, compensation, those are indirect benefits. Now, so makikita natin the primary value dapat ng research study ay yung kanyang ability to generate generalizable knowledge. Yung impact ng kanyang study design. At syempre, yung consideration sa sample size na napili because yung sa sample size can be generalized, can be applied to all members of the population when in fact you only studied a sample, a portion of the population. So, yun. Okay, so titignan natin ngayon yung benefits and risks. Now, ang important na maalala natin is that risk-benefit analysis should consider direct benefits to participants and contributions to generalizable knowledge. Okay? Now, how do we weigh the risk and benefits? Because ang challenge dito is that the risk and benefits sometimes mahirap siyang i-quantify in a uniform scale. So, and that is sometimes may affect different health status areas. And it can also affect different persons. So, kailangan nating magkaroon ng component analysis where we need to assess each intervention independently. We need to distinguish therapeutic versus non-therapeutic procedures. We have to consider direct benefits to participants, all for always, and then we evaluate the clinical equipoise for medical interventions. Pero, kaninong role ang pag-weigh ng risks and benefits? Well, in documents, as evidence, ang merong authority to decide on weighing the risks and benefits ay yung Research Ethics Committee or the Institutional Review Board. It is their role to weigh risks against expected benefits and to ensure a fair account of risks and benefits. After that, doon sila they're authorized to issue a certificate, a clearance, that authorizes na yung proposal na yon can be conducted, is research worthy, kumbaga. Pero ang tanong, sila lang ba ang nag-weigh ng benefits at risk? So, hindi naman pala problema ni researcher yan. Actually, dapat bago pa mapunta kay research ethics clearance, si researcher muna dapat ang nag-weigh ng kanyang sariling study sa benefits and risks ng kanyang study. Kasi siya, dapat pag-present niya dun sa ethics committee, ay dapat klaro na doon, straightforward na doon, specific na doon, lahat ng kanyang special safeguards on how to ensure na research-worthy yung kanyang proposal. Klaro ba yon? Kaya pag sumulat kayo ng research proposal ninyo, you have to take it as your own responsibility to ensure na klaro at tama yung inyong research ethics guidelines sa inyong study. Okay, tapos na natin. Now, when you go for ethics clearance, there are 3 levels na pwedeng maklasify doon ang inyong research proposal. According sa Institutional Review Board, your paper can be classified as exempt research, or it can be classified as an expedited research, or it can be classified needing full board research review. Anong kaibahan? Sa exempt research classification, ang proposal na yon, research proposal, is considered to be a study that has the least danger sa research participants. Pero kahit exempt siya, still it will require approval and registration doon sa ethics committee, sa Institutional Review Board. Anong mga example ng study that will have exempt research classification? Those is surveys that are anonymous, or interviews also that are anonymous. So, least danger kasi hindi naman identified yung mga participants. Pangalawa, yung passive observation without identifiers. So, part ng study design, kailangan i-observe this group of people. Pero hindi naman sila na-identify as kung ano man sila. So, least dangerous din yung ganong research. Yung retrospective chart review. Babalikan mo lang yung mga chart. So, least danger yon. Yung mga pathological specimen na discarded na, least danger kasi di ka na ulit magagather ng sample from human subjects. You are just utilizing existing pathological samples that were discarded actually already. Kaya exempt research on. Yung classification naman na expedited research means there is little risk. No, little risk doon sa or there is minimal risk doon sa study na nire-review. Anong example ng mga study ang pwedeng maging expedited research classification? Those data collection with identifiers and that are non-anonymous. So may minimal risk kasi ay may issue about privacy and confidentiality. So dapat ma-protect yun. Pangalawa, yung surveys and interviews with identifiers. Again, with identifiers. Biological specimens, nakailangan mong i-collect, pero hindi naman sila invasive. So yun, expedited research yun. Blood samples from healthy volunteers. Pwede siyang hindi full board research, kundi minimal risk. Kasi healthy naman ang volunteers. Pero may actual collection ng blood samples. Kaya, syempre, mas mataas ang risk kesa dito sa exempt research. And kapag maggamit ang study ng existing pathological specimens na merong identifier. So, yun, expedited research on. Next classification, full board review, which only means na most dangerous or greater than minimal risk ang meron doon sa research study na yon. So what are the examples ng mga study that will need to undergo full board research review? Those with study that critically investigates a drug or a device. Those invasive medical procedures or diagnostics. Those interviews that are longitudinal and those study about illegal behavior ng respondents. So yon, full board research yon. Treatment for, you're studying about treatment for suicidal ideation and behavior. That will also need full board research review. Kasi triggering yung suicide triggering possibly yung procedure. Okay, so yon. So those are the different levels of ethics review classifications. At yung panghuli, I think ito na yung ating ito na yung panghuli nating topic, yung vulnerability in research. Sabi natin, we need to know if ever our paper will involve vulnerable people, then we need to ensure there are safeguards or protection. So sino muna yung mga vulnerable? These are any person unable to give informed consent. So pwedeng sila ay pregnant women or their fetus because of their fetuses, the juveniles, the prisoners, those with decreased mental capacity, those educationally disadvantaged, those economically disadvantaged. Ang key principle dyan, those unable to consent doesn't preclude participation. In simple terms, hindi ibig sabihin na hindi siya nag-no, willing na siya. Ay hindi siya nag-no, hindi rin siya nag-yes. So dapat wala kang prejudice na, hindi naman nag-no, so yes na yan. Dapat walang ganon. Next ay enhance protections that are required for these vulnerable people. Dapat may additional precautions. Dapat yung consent process ma-enhance. Dapat yung ways to safeguard rights and welfare clearly nakasulat sa methodology. Dapat yung mga protection ay specific sa study at specific doon sa respondents, hindi dapat siya generalized. Dapat may monitoring throughout the research process. Okay? Paano yung sa ethics review? Paano yung sa institutional review board? paano naman nila ina-examine yung vulnerable population? They review through using framework. Unang-una, they try to avoid the vulnerable population groups as at risk to prevent stigmatization. Also, they apply an analytical framework for personalized review. They also provide study-specific, population-specific protections. So kapag si researcher kinulang ang kanyang mga safeguards for this vulnerable population, si ethics committee can actually recommend some to complete and enhance the special protection for these vulnerable people. At syempre, dapat contextual ang approach sa protection. Yung vulnerability should, on a scale of severity should be considered. Okay? So ang best practice for institutional review board review ay focus on conditions and context rather than labeling individuals. So there are different categories of vulnerability. Meron tayong cognitive, communicative vulnerability, may institutional vulnerability, differential, medical, economic, social, legal, and study vulnerability. So isa-isayin natin. Sa communicative or cognitive, those are people who can understand consent forms. They might be illiterate, there might be a language barrier. So dapat ma-address yan. Pangalawa, institutional. These are authority figure that may coerce consent among the respondents. Like yung kanina example ko, professor ako, magkakandak ako ng study, tapos kukunin ko kayo ng mga students ko. So doon pa lang, mayroon ng institutional vulnerability. Okay? Next is differential. Yung mga subservient to authority. Like for example, abuse victims, patients. Okay? Yung medical vulnerability, these are conditions among the respondents that might impair decision making because they may see the study as a miracle cure. All right? And then the economic. The financial need may lead to accepting excessive risk for compensation. Kaya nga ang token natin dapat minimal lang. Hindi dapat siya magbibigay ng economic vulnerability. And then the social vulnerability. Vulnerability because of prejudices about race, gender, age. Yan. For legal naman, the respondents may fear legal consequences kaya magpa-participate na lang sila sa study so they can be considered legally vulnerable. Meron silang legal vulnerability. And then lastly is the study design vulnerability. The design itself, doon sa research study, might include deception and disclosure. Katulad sa example ko kanina about not informing the respondents doon sa purpose ng research, yung study about bias. Okay? So yun. Now, I think that ends our topic. Let me just discuss a few. Actually, I prepared here 10 case scenarios. So siguro dalawa lang yung i-discuss ko and the rest you can just read and if you want to, kasi these are just add-ons, no? Hindi naman talaga sila kasama dun sa add-ons lang natin to. Ito yung sinasabi ko dati, isasama ko kasi to doon sa new book namin. But I'm also taking the opportunity to share it now with my students para naman mapag-benefit na rin kayo. So let's i-discuss ko yung siguro yung mga let's discuss pipili ako. Ito, discuss natin to yung economic vulnerability. Ano yung una? Ito. Sige, i-discuss ko naman yung economic vulnerability and financial inducement. Kasi kanina pinag-usapan na natin about token compensation. So this is the case, no, that highlights economic vulnerability, a situation where financial need might influence someone's decision to participate in research. Okay, so this is a case where a pharmaceutical company is recruiting pregnant women from low-income communities for a clinical trial, no, of a new medication to prevent preterm birth. Di pa siya nakaabot ng full term, pero pwede siyang manganak. How do we prevent that? Parang yun ang research. Yun ang research ni pharmaceutical company. No, about a drug, no, a medication that will prevent that. So the study carries a known risk to the fetus. Participants will receive $500 compensation, equivalent to 1 month's rent for many participants. Malaki. In peso, $500 was like almost between 5 to 30,000. Di ba? So malaki yun. Recruitment materials emphasize the benefit, no, prominently, the financial benefit prominently. So if you try to imagine, no, there here is there is a possible research participant. Here is a single mother working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet. Then she sees an advertisement offering $500 for a research study. Kasi yung recruitment materials nandun. Prominent yung offer na $500 for the research study. And that money could pay for groceries for a month, even the rent. So, sa tingin nyo ba, a single mother, no, who is pregnant, sa tingin nyo ba magno-no siya? What do you think? Magno-no kaya si single mother? May $500, 25 to 30,000 pesos yun. Tapos, buntis pa siya. May 2 siyang trabaho. Walang pera. Tapos makita niya yung magno-no kaya siya? Yes or no? Anyone? Magno-no kaya? Siyempre hindi, di ba? Mag-yes, si single mother. So the tension here is between financial need and informed choice, and between research progress and protection of vulnerable population. Vulnerable si Mrs. kasi single mother na siya, buntis pa siya. Tapos vulnerable din yung kanyang fetus kasi hindi natin alam kung ano yung risk doon sa fetus. Wala siyang pera. So, yun. I mean, disadvantage siya. So, very clear yung intention between financial need and informed choice. So the compensation might override their ability to make a fully or voluntary decision. Okay? So yun. So ano ang dapat decision? Ang proposed decision is to modify the study. Okay? So, paano? Paano i-modify yung study? First is to reduce the compensation to a reasonable amount that reimburses time and expenses but doesn't become an inducement. No, it will induce participation. Dapat hindi ganon. Pangalawa, the Research Ethics Committee might advise provide additional counseling to ensure participants truly understand the risks, hindi lang yung pera, kundi yung risk, especially doon sa fetus. Pangatlo, allow adequate time for decision making. Don't pressure for immediate consent. And ensure that participants understand they can still decline without penalty. Paano i-justify ito? The principle of non-maleficence says that we must avoid harm. If compensation is so high that it overcomes a person's rational decision-making, that's already a form of harm. And the Belmont Report's principle of justice says that we should fairly distribute the burdens. We shouldn't target vulnerable population just because they need money. Okay? To morally evaluate this scenario and the decision, the act or the object is good if we reduce the compensation to fair levels. The intention is good if we're not trying to coerce the participation. The circumstances require safeguards because of economic vulnerability. The outcome is informed and voluntary participation should be ensured. Okay? So we have this interesting scenario, no? On 9:37 na pala, I need to conclude my topic. So again, please go through the different cases. And the group one who will do the role play, the ethics simulation, role play for for this bioethics and research, you can choose from any of these cases. Okay? Now, for the key takeaways ng ating discussion for today, research ethics protects. It should safeguard human dignity, rights, and welfare of participants. The informed consent is essential. No, voluntary participation without coercion is a fundamental right. Also, we need to protect the vulnerable populations. And to protect them, we have the 4 pillars to guide us. We should also be balancing risk and benefits. And lastly, an ethical nurse makes a difference. Your commitment ensures ensures patient safety and trust. Okay? And I leave you with this quote from the Belmont Report. According to the Belmont Report, the measure of a great institution, or indeed again of any great institution, is its commitment to the ethical treatment of those who participate in its research. So the focus are on the participants. And as future nurses, you hold the power to protect human dignity and advance science ethically. Your commitment to research ethics ensures that healthcare remains trustworthy, compassionate, and just. So let your practice be guided by ethics, and your hearts be filled with compassion, and your mind be focused on the well-being of those those you serve. And in this case, it is the participants, the research participants. Talinaw ba yun? So again, thank you everyone for joining me in this session today. Do you have any question, clarification? Meron ba?